You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options. Facebook.com/TheOptionsInsider or via questions at TheOptionsInsider.com.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
Welcome back to Options Insider Radio, the interview program here on the old network where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of options and derivatives and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. If we sound a little bit different, it's because we're not coming to you from our studio in Chicago. We're beaming at you from the Options Industry Conference here in sunny Florida. And a great event because it gives us a chance to catch up with a really broad cross-section of the entire options industry. Brokers, vendors, exchanges, clearers, you name it. Even once in a while, an educator will darken our door. Like our next fellow here, whose voice may be familiar with you. He's on our network once or twice. He of dark hat, black hat infamy on our Options Bootcamp program. Look who I bumped into at the Options Industry Conference. None other than Dan Passarelli from Market Taker Mentoring. Dan, welcome to the program. It's been so long.
Yeah, it's nice to be here in scenic Florida. This is okay.
Yeah, there are worse places. I know we don't mind meeting in Chicago, but in the studio. There's free beverages in the studio. But, yeah, a little bit of nice weather. There are worse things, right?
Yeah, it's great. Well, there's beverages here. You know, this
tasty water. We do give you tasty water here.
Tasty water.
Tasty, flirty, a little hint of lime. It's good stuff. So, Dan, what is it that brings you down to the Options Industry Conference? I think you have the distinction of being the sole educator that I've run into here, outside of some of the guys who work for the brokers and things. But you're the lone educator. So, what brings you down to OIC?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people talking about the need for education. So. Coming down to fill that gap. The Options Industry Conference is a conference basically where a bunch of guys from Chicago get on a plane and get together and chat.
Pretty much. I joke that this conference, everyone travels across the country to chat with people they could see down the street. That's everyone we've had in here so far, for the most part, is within a mile of our studio in Chicago. But c'est la vie. People like to talk in warm weather, I find. So we get them down here and they open up. So far, has it been an interesting conference? Any of these themes, and a lot of themes are bouncing around here that are kind of interesting. Liquidity seems to be a big theme down here, and maybe the lack thereof. Is this something? I mean, you obviously interact with a lot of the bleeding edge of the retail space. Is this something they're coming to you now with some concerns, saying, "Hey, Dan, I'm doing all these things you're telling me about. I'm learning how to trade. I'm graduating into maybe spreads and verticals or things like that, and all of a sudden I can't get my 10 lots filled because Maybe I'm trading outside the top 20 names. I dare to trade something that's a little bit less liquid, or maybe it's something else, or maybe they're trading a little bit farther from the at-the-money and they can't get filled. Is this something you're hearing more of?
Yeah, I'd say liquidity issues is probably one of the top 10 things that people come to me to get better at, because it's something that having some skill you can overcome a lot of trading in illiquid names.
First thing you tell them is, okay, go trade Apple, right? That's what you tell them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Go trade Apple or Facebook or SPY, and forget this pink sheet stuff that you want to write calls on. But it is funny. I've been banding about this number of like 20 names, somewhere in that ballpark. Does about half the volume. We just had the COO of the OCC in here, and he was saying it's about like 10 to 12. So it's even more dire than you would say, or doing like the lion's share of the volume on any given day. So that certainly isn't an encouraging trajectory. I don't know what we can do, but it's got to be something. I mean, you can't generate demand on the part of the consumer at the end of the day, but something has to be done to try to broaden that. Let alone, who knows, in a decade, then we'll all be talking about and only trading Apple, or what, one name will be 80% of the volume if this continues in this direction. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you counsel a lot of your retail to trade around that. What do you think we can do? I mean, you're a former market maker like myself. That space has kind of gone the way of the dodo. There are about 4 firms left, big firms really running the whole thing left. What can we do to maybe get more market makers back, or maybe do something to broaden what people are actually trading out there aside from these, top 15, 20 names?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. Just the idea of liquidity and like, why do we have so many of these names that don't really trade? Should we just get rid of them? Should we get rid of a lot of the strikes that are out there? And that's kind of a tough question, because I was just listening to a session, and one of the themes that they were talking about is liquidity begets liquidity, So even though there's some of these stocks and strikes that don't really trade a lot, because they exist, traders are leaning on them. Like if they're in an ETF, or in some sort of a basket, they may trade those in sort of like an arbitrage type scenario, and it does beget more liquidity. But then there's a risk to it too, because
you got to be out there on all those strikes, right? So that's not that you're going to widen out as a result.
Yeah, and these days, where there's electronic trading and somebody can just hit a button and lift all your offers, it's pretty interesting.
It's funny you mentioned the delisting, 'cause that's something that people have been some sort of quote mitigation, your strike mitigation. So people have been kind of talking about that behind the scenes at events like this for a long time. But it's interesting. As I mentioned, I just had the COO of the OCC in here, and for the first time I heard someone from there, him, effectively saying they're looking into doing some of that kind of stuff now, which is the first time I've actually heard it officially from them, that they're thinking maybe we've hit a point now where it's worth investigating whether. And I asked them, is that going to be delisting or RFQ? They don't really know the mechanism yet, but it seems like something. The exchanges are talking about it, OCC is talking about it, the other firms, even some of the brokers out there are talking. So it seems like for the first time in a while, there's a consensus that something needs to be done on these. Especially, there's 4,000 names out there that pretty much barely trade. You can take the top 1,000 and probably cut them out, and you're not really doing a huge disservice to the world. So maybe do something along the lines of RFQ, or maybe you make some of the far out months that don't trade a lot RFQ, but do something. Because if you're a market maker today, you have new exchange coming online. So you got to connect to 16 now. You got to update quotes on 16 venue. You can get hit at any one of those at any time, including these thousands of names that never trade, but hey, someone's picking you off because your model's wrong on XYZ Pink Sheet's name. Okay, bam, there you go. There's $10 million you just lost because you had the tenacity to put a quote out there. Yeah. That's the kind of thing these guys have to deal with. So something that could mitigate that risk would probably be a good thing. And who knows, maybe we could broaden the number of market makers out there to beyond. You can count them on one hand, which would probably be a good thing. Because it's funny, I used to joke when I was on the floor. You probably did too. It used to be
I never joked on the floor.
You were very serious.
I was very serious.
You were that guy. You were focused all day long. But I used to joke that, I used to at least, that, how great would it be if you were the only guy in the crowd, right? Because then you could be as wide as you wanted, and everybody had to trade with you, and you got all the paper, and it would be just printing money, and what a fantasy that would be. And then fast forward a decade or so, and all of a sudden, that seems kind of where we've got. It's not quite one firm, but it's about 5. And even if you talk to a lot of them, they're kind of like, this is maybe a little bit too few even for us. They don't necessarily want a lot of competitors, but they probably want a few more to be able to lay off some of this risk. It's a lot of risk for any one firm to take down. So I think we've reached that tipping point now. And thankfully, at an event like this, people seem to be on the same page that we got to do something. Otherwise, that graph's not pointing in the right direction. So who knows? Maybe crypto will save us all, right, Dan? Crypto
Right.
options will list, and it'll be the hugest thing, and it's going to trade everywhere. And forget about these 19 equity names. We're going to be talking about Ethereum and Ripple options and Bitcoin. It's going to be an awesome, brave new world. Are people hitting you up at MTM about crypto? Are they coming to you saying, hey, teach me about this crypto? I mean, there's no real listed options yet, but still, is this something you're hearing about?
Yeah, we actually did a class, I want to say January or February on crypto, a 4-part class. And
put you on the bleeding edge there.
Yeah, it was really well attended. It is interesting stuff. A couple people at the show asked me, they go, well, what do you think about cryptocurrencies? And my take is there's kind of 2 answers. If you're asking me, me being a trading educator at a trading show, there's 2 answers. Like the one answer is, do I think it's a viable currency? And the other is, do I think it's a viable trading product? And those 2 answers are completely unrelated.
One has nothing to do with the other.
Right. So yeah, I think it's definitely a viable trading product because people trade it.
Exactly. You know, someone was having a similar conversation last night, and they were kind of expressing all these doubts about, you know, the underlying value and money laundering and all that. And I was like, I'm with you on all that. You know, all of those things, all of those questions are viable. And yet there's an interest. It's clear interest in this product. And how long has it been since this industry has had something where there's a groundswell of interest in it? You know, like I said, the numbers are dwindling in terms of what people are actually willing to trade. Yeah. Now something literally falls in our lap out of nothing, out of the literal ether, consists of nothing, has no intrinsic value, and yet everyone wants to trade it. So at a certain point, I mean, you have to take baby steps and make sure, you know, you're not embracing something that's wholly broken or going to go to zero. But at the same point, you know, people want this thing. You have to seed their demand at some point, right, and give them something to trade. So hopefully, I was pressing SIBO a little bit yesterday about Bitcoin options. Hopefully we'll get something listed. They don't seem in too much of a hurry to list them. CME doesn't seem like in too much of a hurry. So it's kind of funny. Everyone raced out of the gate with the futures. Then it's like, oh, let's pump the brakes on these crazy crypto options things. It's like, well, you guys were tripping over each other to get the futures listed. Yeah. Now you can't be bothered to list the options. So it is kind of weird. I'm with Warren Buffett. I think he said, I'd sure love to buy a put on Bitcoin, but I sure as hell don't want to short it. Right, and I'm totally of the same amount. I'm not going to touch that underlying with a 10-foot pole, but I'll trade some options on it if you put it out there. Well, you mentioned your classes. I know you have a big class coming up. Your big annual retreat, the MTM monthly retreat. You wear robes, you get tattoos. It's supposed to be a pretty good event. When are you doing this retreat, and where are you going this year?
Yeah, this year we're pretty excited. July 27th and 28th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're going to have an event at the Liberty Bell? You get to crack it a little bit more?
Right. No, we've actually got a great venue. We really shopped it around a lot and found probably, I don't know, if it's not the nicest hotel in Philly, it's one of the nicest hotels in Philly.
You're the man. The nicest hotel in Philly.
Yeah. The Logan.
The motel by the airport.
Oh, you've heard of it.
Yes, it's a great place. I've been there.
They call it Hojo.
Yeah, yes, Hojo's Premium.
Right. So yeah, we're really excited about this 2-day event.
And what do you do at this 2-day event? Fill us in for those of us who have not attended. I'm still waiting for my first class, all expenses paid ticket, by the way. You kind of left me hanging in Napa Valley last year, and I'm still a little bit bitter, but we won't go there.
It's in the mail. It's in the mail, I promise. So yeah, it's really great. The whole education team, me, John Kamisic, John Seguin, we're all going to be out there.
How many Johns do you have?
Two as of right now. And so it's all day teaching. We do breakout sessions. We're covering, doing some live trading. We're doing some technical analysis stuff, the long call, bull call screen. The second day, we're spending half a day just on adjusting. So that's going to be great. And then really the best part of this is at the end of the second day, I take everybody out to dinner, going to a really great place. It's called City Tavern. It's really interesting. It's a James Beard Award winning chef who's got some Emmys for, he's like a history food kind of guy. I don't know exactly the best way to say it.
At a tavern. Interesting.
Yeah. And this tavern is like, I don't know, the frickin' Constitution or something was signed there. Like, it's like a really big deal.
That's the best thing about Philly. Every building has some sort of deep relevance to our cultural history here. It's amazing.
Yeah. So there's that, and the food is, it's pretty gourmet kind of stuff, but it's like food from the birth of our nation era,
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it was sitting out for 200 years.
Yes, 200-year-old pot pie. That sounds interesting. That sounds good. And a meal tastes better when it's on Dan Passarelli. Trust me, listeners. So head on out there. You're doing a whole half day on adjustments. That's probably worth it alone for people. That's a big part of the trading, educational scene that isn't covered as much. I think we talked about this before on our boot camp show and things that, people talk about expiration graphs and here's where you start and here's where it ends, but that middle, a whole lot goes on in that middle, and very few people actually talk about that. So I'm glad to hear. You could probably just do a whole event just on that, I would think.
Yeah, probably. I was just talking with somebody here at the show, I guess yesterday, that, the idea, and I guess we have talked about this on the show, getting into the trade is one thing, but when the way you get out of a trade determines whether you make or lose money. Yeah. Like that's the important part. So
Yeah, you put something on and it's going your way, and you sell. Oh God, get the hell out! I'm making money. And then it doubles and triples after that. You're angry at yourself, and you left a lot of money on the table. If you don't get out, obviously you left a lot of money on the table. So there's it's an interesting area and definitely an underserved one. So give us the dates again.
Yeah, so it's July 27th and 28th. You can read all about it at markettaker.com/Philly. Have the whole agenda on there, information about the hotel. We got some great deal on the room block. We actually have an early bird discount that is going to end really soon. I have to look at my calendar. I think a week or so.
Well, get in there before it goes, listeners. By the way, Market Taker 2 T's. Have you bought the one with 1 T yet? Because that always trips me up. I always type. I think my browser has it saved as 1 T. So I was like, wait a minute, Mike, what is this adult film site that I'm going to?
That's my other.
That's your other. That's your side business. But I know, speaking of side business, you have a lot going on in Market Taker. In addition to the class, you have one-on-one teaching and coaching. You have your educational classes. You even have a chat room. So walk us through what else people can do when they visit Market Taker with 2 T's.
Yeah. The MTM community chat room is really great. It actually got some wind in its sails over the last couple of months, and it's a really robust community of people helping each other. It's like when I originally came up with the idea, that's what I wanted, just a resource where people can get together and help each other and get trade ideas and, like, hey, how do I find this thing on my Thinkorswim platform? Oh, well, here, I use that. Here's how you do it. And they take a picture and post it.
That's a frequently asked question. It's a very dense platform.
Yeah.
I have to myself, I'm like, where the heck is this? It's a huge application. It's one of the downsides of having so many features, I suppose.
Yeah, so the chat room's great. It's $97 a month, but if you sign up for any of our classes, you get it free.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, and there's actually a little scam it can pull over on us. Even if you sign up for our newsletter for $79 a month, you get the $97 chat room for free. So
scam it, guys. There you go. Scam Dan. That's what the title of this episode. Scamming Dan Passarelli. There you go. So head on over to markettaker.com. 2 T's, listeners. And then you too can get the newsletter. You can get the chat room. You can sign up for the coaching, the one-on-one stuff. How often do you do that?
The one-on-one coaching, we actually occasionally accept applications. We just went through the application process, and as of right now, I think we're closed.
What does one need to apply? Like, do they need to be a certain experience level or a certain account size? Like, what does one need to get into the one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, good question. We try to accept people from all experience levels, including beginners, and I highly encourage beginners.
They probably need it the most.
Yeah, and some of the problem is when somebody comes in and they've got like 3 years experience because they tried to figure it out on their own, they've got all these bad habits.
They have 3 years of experience of selling puts, I'm guessing. Yeah, that's their experience.
Right, and we need to like deprogram them. So I'd rather, start with a fresh lump of clay that we can mold into, a great trader. But, we go through and we learn what they know, give them sort of a knowledge test and ask them some questions to see if it makes sense for them, because it doesn't make sense for everybody. But for some people, it makes a ton of sense for. It's the shortest path and the simplest path to excellence.
So let me ask you, when I sign up for the one-on-one coaching, when do I get my Lamborghini with no skill and no risk? How soon can I get that through your coaching methods?
Right. Well, that part you might be a little bit on your own.
Okay. Okay. Well, just checking, because I know I've been promised that kind of thing before, and I wanted to see what you were delivering. Well, John, I've been talking to a lot of Johns this week. You got so many Johns on your staff. That's what got John in my head. Dan, glad you could join us here at the Options Industry Conference. I know we'll be talking again soon in the studio at some point. So check out markettaker.com, listeners, 2 T's, and sign up for the newsletter, sign up for the chat, sign up for one-on-one coaching if you're so inclined. And indeed, July 27th, you said, for the big event?
Yep, July 27th and 28th.
In Philly, head on out to the birthplace of our nation and hang out with Dan, have some 200-year-old food, and maybe you learn something or two. Should be fun.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thank you, Dan.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.